JB Knowledge Podcast Network.
On episode 65 of the Insurtech Geek Podcast, talking about builders risk and tech with David Baxter from iMitig8 Risk. The Insurtech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. Greetings and salutations to listeners out there in listening land. Good to have you on the show this week. As we record this, it is 11 a.m. Central Time on Friday, September 17th. That's right. It's another game day Friday. We got a big Friday of high school football followed by college football here in the United States, which of course makes my world a whole much more interesting and have all kinds of fun with that. But more importantly, it's also when we record the Insurtech Geek Podcast, and we are going to be geeking out with a guest who lives in Atlanta, but he's actually from England, and he's over in Greenwich near London right now, recording and staying up a little bit. It's a little bit later in the day than it is over here. Glad to have David Baxter on. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with me from beautiful San Antonio, Texas, the illustrious Rob Galbraith, the most interesting man in insurance. Rob, good to see you as always.
Yeah, happy Friday, gentlemen. And just to clarify, since we've got David on from the UK, we're talking about American football, because I also know the English Premier League is in full swing and the Champions League has started. So we got our football bases covered globally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're watching the football they don't play with feet, and David is actually interested in the football they actually play with feet. And so just to be really, really clear, I actually played soccer / English football, proper football, my entire life. So I love that. But and we're getting Rooney. We get a lot of highlights of Rooney now with MLS. We enjoy. We enjoy. It's like MLS has turned into the Premier League's retirement circuit. They come over to America, they get to redo their career and and make just as much money over here. Playing for smaller crowds, it's quite enjoyable getting to watch some of my favorite Champions League and Premier League and La Liga stars come over here and hang out with us in America. Before we get started with our interview, of course, we're not going to talk about football or soccer. We're going to be talking about Insurtech and builders risk and all kinds of fun things. I want to remind you can subscribe to the podcast by texting Geek Out to 66866. Make sure you never miss an episode. We'll email you the show notes every week and a link to download and listen to the show. As always, text Geek Out to 66866. Back to our guest, David Baxter. David, again, good to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us later in the day from beautiful Greenwich, just outside of London, England there. We're going to talk about Insurtech, but first I want to talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born and raised, and what did you envision doing when you were a kid?
Born and raised in the UK, in Birmingham, actually, which is the second city. And what did I envisage doing before, when I grew up? Is actually going to be an astronaut. Every kid's dream, either that or a pilot. And watched a lot of these, space shows, and one of them was called Space 1999. I'm not sure if you probably remember that, but I'm probably showing my age now. But really got into that show, and I wanted to be a spaceman.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did too. I ended up becoming a pilot, and I fly once or twice a week. So I fly a lot. Love flying.
Wow.
Love being in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now being an astronaut is much more possible now than it ever was. We currently, as we speak, we have an all civilian crew rocketing around the planet on a private spacecraft.
That's right. Yeah.
How cool is that?
Brilliant. I think lucky for those fortunate people to do that. And I would love to, putting it out there in the universe. I'd love to be on that spaceship for the next time they go.
Yeah, it's really, me too. Yeah. If it's higher and faster, I'm down. I like to go high and fast,
Absolutely.
And there's nothing like it at all. I can tell you that. That's amazing. So you end up going into building and building construction technology and building construction, and you go into this as a field of study. Like what led you to pick building construction as a field of study and a career?
I think it all really started when, just seeing how construction was booming in the UK. And as I was growing up, I was actually a photographer to begin with. Didn't really make a lot of money, didn't make a huge career out of photography, but I enjoyed it, and really decided then to sort of take it to the next level. Started doing photography of buildings, and then got into studying construction and building, and really then took me to the level of as a chartered surveyor, as they're called here in the UK, which is somebody who looks at construction and buildings, engineering, and so on. And then with that, sort of qualification, it sort of led me into the insurance space. I became a loss adjuster. I worked as a loss adjuster for over 10 years, and it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. You have your knowledge base for construction, project management, and then you become a loss adjuster, bringing that sort of skill set from the insurance industry, and then coupling that together, went into risk management, doing loss control inspections and risk engineering inspections for many insurance companies. So there's lots of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that I had. I just needed to bring them all together.
I just love talking about chartered surveyors. So I was pretty active in the Canadian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and we had a collaboratory agreement with the RICS, of which you are still a member and chapter chair of RICS Southeast. And I've always said, because I have a separate podcast called Content Crew, and then this one, Insurtech Geek, and there, of course, there's a lot of overlap between buildings and insurance, and of course, that's kind of what this whole episode is about, is the overlap between risk and construction.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see the missing profession here in the United States of chartered surveyors, how that's really not a thing. It needs to. We need it to be a thing.
Yeah.
And we don't have a professional association of quantity surveyors that can sign a bill of quantities and everybody can just bid a unified BOQ. Like that whole concept just doesn't exist. And it makes for a much weaker construction industry. But what's interesting about being a chartered surveyor, and the RSCS has done so much worldwide for the quality of buildings, is that it gives you such a fantastic perspective on risk for buildings, right? I mean, knowing how buildings are built, and knowing how, being a chartered surveyor and being able to really understand how to quantify buildings, how they're put together, how to survey them. I mean, these are really core skill sets that must make you a very effective risk engineer coming in from the insurance side.
Absolutely. And, as I say, bringing those skill sets is like one big jigsaw puzzle, having them and then really then taking that into the software industry. The mindset came to me, and the idea, about 8 years ago. And I said, there's a better way of doing what we do as a risk engineer. And, I know the industry and the background, but it was very, very much paper driven, particularly with builder's risk. Builder's risk is a very, very important part of the insurance industry. There's lots of technology out there which drives industries like within the insurance industry, like the pet insurance, healthcare insurance. So there's lots of software for that, but nothing for builder's risk. It's very, very small. It's quite a niche market. So having the skill sets that I have, we came about setting up iMitig8 Risk. And really offered something formidable to the insurance industry. We are a startup, so it's relatively new. We had the software developed and launched early this year in May. So we're now in production with several insurance companies who are using it. They love it, and the intention is to grow the client base and go into full production, which is going to be actually in October. Next month. So that's when we'll go into full production, and various insurers will start to really benefit from the data that we're driving.
Awesome. And I know Rob has a great question about iMitig8. So Rob, take it away.
Yeah, David, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I know your company is based out of Atlanta. So there was some big news this week with another Atlanta-based company, MailChimp, having a $12 billion sale to the Intuit folks, the TurboTax folks. So, kind of a
Yeah.
Big milestone, I guess, for the Atlanta startup community. Can you share a little bit about how iMitigate Risk supports insurance providers and their clients by managing the builder's risk exposure?
Sure. So the software really promotes a wide array of different aspects. So if you can imagine the insurance company is the driver of a bus and they have several passengers, those passengers would be the broker, the risk manager, who's the insured, risk vendors. They go to external risk vendors or internal risk engineers to do their surveys. And there'll be somebody on site who's, remember this is during construction. So there'll be somebody on site who manages the site and the risk. So how insurance companies are really benefiting from this is when they use the software, information flow. It's a flow network guidance document which allows them to really promote and send instructions to their vendors very quickly. Recommendations which the risk engineer is offering to the site contact at site to say, look, here's some areas where you need to improve on. Before this, it was very much paper driven. So if you can imagine a risk engineer going to a project and giving instructions to a contractor saying, look, we suggest doing this because it helps to reduce claims. The paper driven process was going through to the broker. It was then the broker would have to then send that to the site contact and the risk manager. Very, very slow. The whole aspect is to reduce claims. So imagine that slow process churning away, and all of a sudden there's a claim. Now, we issued recommendations 3 months ago, but they didn't reach the site contact through the bottlenecks that is being caused in the supply chain. This is, in real time. Everything is given and issued across all stakeholders. There's a mobile app which helps the risk engineer collate the recommendations quickly and note them to photographs and site plans, and everything is just much more smooth. The whole process, is the time process is cut down by 50% with ease, just through inefficiencies in the system. So insurers are really benefiting from the data. The data is collected. There's predictive analytics and AI tools which helps them to forecast the risk going forward in the future. When is it likely to have a claim, for instance, based on data which is being collected from other construction projects around the world? And this is a global thing. Insurance companies spend just over $1.5 billion every year on insurance risk surveys. That's a lot of money. There's over 25,000 risk engineers worldwide. So imagine everybody using our system, and they're not yet, but we hope to be the next unicorn and they'll start using it. So as they're using this system, imagine all that data being collected and how we can really leverage that information. So yeah, it's they're certainly getting the benefit. It's all linked to geotagged locations as well. So we partner with a company called Monarch Weather Consulting, and we use Esri mapping as well for our base maps. And in that sense, they're our partners. And we work with them to provide us layers to show what outside influences can affect those projects.
So let's get geeky. Let's talk about the tech.
Mm-hmm.
Like at its heart, is this would you because I've been writing software since 1991, like writing code.
Sure.
So like I'm going to get a little geeky with you.
Okay.
Because you're a risk and building geek. I'm a software geek, and of course I love I love writing insurance and construction software, and I've written my fair share of platforms. Is this at its heart a business intelligence platform? Is this is this really BI and dashboarding and pulling in multiple data sources? I mean, is this all sitting on cloud architecture? I mean, like walk me through how this is built and what you would categorize it at from a technical perspective.
It's a SaaS platform. It's cloud-based. 5 years ago, insurance companies weren't interested in cloud-based platforms.
They about face, didn't they?
yeah, totally about face, and they're now screaming for them. So it is a cloud-based platform. We use, the software is basically using, as I say, a mobile application and a dashboard. So it is, BI analytics. It's using, artificial intelligence to, categorize photographs. So when we take a picture at site, it can recognize what that is. It will then tell us the type of recommendation that should be issued. And we use likelihood and severity of a risk score So what's built into the system, the algorithms, when we give it a risk score, it will contribute to the overall risk score of the actual project that we've inspected, which is very interesting because contractors don't like to hear the fact they've got a number attached to their project. So
wait, you mean I get a score, like a report card?
yeah, in a sense, yeah. Imagine your credit score for a construction site.
Yeah.
So they get this score, and everything's collated across the platform with lots of different points of inspection points. And once that score comes out, immediately they're closing those recommendations. They know in order to reduce that score, they need to do various things. So what we've found is psychologically, they're tapping into that score and saying, look, we don't want it to be assessed for this for our project. And they're closing recommendations within 2 or 3 days, which brings their score right down. It's very important because insurance companies need to know where they sit, within other projects that might be similar. The beauty about the software as well is that the data that's collected, it all goes into what's called a global ecosystem, which is anonymized data of scores. So you can compare scores across the platform, as well as it will send trigger alerts to stakeholders who are doing similar projects as long as they're a stakeholder, and it will give them lessons learned. Here is a project that may have had a claim, and it will send them a stakeholder alert to say, don't do this because you could get a claim. So there's lots of different aspects that it's doing to manage and control risk. So without going too, I know you've asked me the question about the architecture and the software. It's more of a developer's question. I'm just the founder.
No, I got it. Well, I mean, I'm a technical founder, right? So I mean, it just depends on the type of founder that you are. But I love digging into some of the details. Of course, I went to the website, looked at the screenshots. There are other solutions out there that manage construction photos, use machine learning and artificial intelligence to recognize objects and tools and what's happening. They recognize employee behavior and pattern, can recognize objects and search through them. I mean, so how are you different than the 4 other solutions that deal with construction photos and their analytics that are pretty prominent on the market? I mean, what makes you different that you're doing score assessment, that you're bringing this into a broader BI dashboard for risk on the job? Like what makes you different?
I think builder's risk is a bit of a dark science. You can look at Contech and you can look at all different aspects of these different platforms, but the workflow in them, you've got to follow protocol. I'm not allowed as a risk engineer to go directly to the insured. I've got to go through various parties. That would be the insurance company, the broker, and these are the stakeholders, hence the reason why we built a platform that we go through following protocol. We couldn't just show up at site and say, we're going to do a survey. So it's the difference is in the workflow and how it's all put together. Because if we went and there was a claim, it could prejudice that claim. We can't just go and start looking at various things and then, wave a big bagged stick and say, you've got to do this, that, and the other. It's not about that. Insurance companies work with their clients, hence the reason this software has been built for that reason, to help them manage their risk. And the insurance company pays for that. They don't want to see claims. So in order to do that, contractors see insurance risk as pushing the risk away from them and pushing it back to the insurance company. And the insurance company sees the risk as, look, you're the contractor, you've got to manage your own risk, but we need to know how you're doing that. So there's a bit in the middle, and I think we fill the gap in order to make sure that risk is being properly managed, because it can't be managed by one person. It's got to be managed by a collaboration of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like some really unique things. I think your integration with Esri and Monarch really brings some beautiful necessary data into the platform, right? Where you're bringing weather data in and geospecific data. Of course, Esri, the leader in geospatial management. I mean, with ArcGIS and everything they have going on, and then Monarch, it brings it some really phenomenal weather. And you look at things that really can impact the risk on a job site. Certainly weather and geographic considerations are high on the list. So
Yeah.
I love the integrations you brought to it. You've really hit my big three on products is they need to bring automation, they need to bring intelligence, they need to bring integration.
Mhm.
It can't just be an input form and an output form anymore. That was 1995 software, not 2021 software.
Absolutely.
So you definitely really hit the nail on the head with things that I look for in a platform, in particular one that applies to such a big industry. I know you describe it as a niche, but of course the building industry is a multi-trillion-dollar business. I mean, this is it's builder's risk. Yes, it is a niche coverage, but it's a niche coverage for one of the largest industries on the planet. So it's there's a lot to it. Rob, you've got a really great follow-up on workflow.
Yeah, David, you mentioned workflow, and I think this is often underestimated from a lot of solutions that I've seen out there more broadly in terms of, you may have great technology and it's got all the bells and whistles, but it can be hard to break into somebody's workflow just because it can be, highly disruptive. And, I often describe this as the gate agent problem, right? We've all been at the airport and we might have a conversation with the gate agent and we see them toggling through all these green screens using function keys and things like that from the 1980s. And we're wondering, how can they possibly use that? But yet, if you gave them a modern interface that you and I could actually, make sense of it and potentially, be a halfway competent gate agent, that person that's been relying on that old system for a long time, it actually slows them down, right? And so they may actually not want to adopt the new technology. So I'm just curious, as you've kind of said, hey, previously this was a paper-based process, so now I'm bringing it into the 21st century using technology. Did you have any insights or lessons learned? I know some of our audience members would really benefit from what are some keys when you're introducing technology into people's workflows? Are there some best practices or lesson learned that you can share?
Sure, and it's an interesting question. Certainly some lessons learned. I think that whether they're paper-driven or legacy systems that they may have been using in the past, I think it's all down to making sure that there's proper training and also instructional videos which are produced very early on, making sure that the workflow is there, that they can have access to that workflow and see how things work. It's something that I believe strongly, going away from things like brochures and booklets and instruction paper documents. We want to reduce paper. So everything that we have on our system, there's a cool little help onboarding screen which takes them through the flow. But I think key aspect is to do with actual one-to-one training, especially when it comes to using the mobile application. Some of our stakeholders across the supply chain, if you can imagine, we may never get access to the site contact or the risk manager through the insurance process unless we actually see them on site. So when they download the mobile app to use it to close recommendations, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand what to do. So there is a very, very easy onboarding process for them. And we've made that part, who we don't necessarily interface with on a day-to-day basis, very easy to use and a very easy interface, which they can look at it intuitively, click a few buttons and make sure that they get to where they want to get to very quickly.
I would imagine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, usability is such a big deal, in particular with a construction field workforce, right? I mean, you don't have time to spend 20 hours training everybody on how to use this. Ease of use, adoption is routinely cited as the number one challenge in deployment of technology by construction companies, and you need them to be able to collect the data and adopt this quickly so that you can actually capture all the information you need. Walk me through the future of the platform, the technology itself. Like, is this really going to morph into something else where you start getting in job site cameras and you jump in with a few of the different web security camera providers? You start putting equipment and sensors and cameras on heavy equipment. Like, what technically speaking are you would you like to do if you could wave a wand? You want to stick 360 cameras on every hard hat? Like, what do you really want to do? Right now, you're doing a mobile app.
Yeah. Another cool question. So thank you for that. We're already in collaboration partnership talks with a company that provides 360 cameras. If you can imagine us as risk engineers, we go to a project probably every 6 months during construction and through different stages of the construction. Now, we want to fill the gap. There's usually a big gap in between. When we go away from a 6-month inspection, what's happened in between? We want to know if the risk has been going up or down, or so, site managers using 360 cameras, stuck on their hard hat, they walk the site every day. We don't need data every day, but there's a collaboration where we want to see that some of that information through AI capture in the photographs will know what the likelihood and severity of various risks are on their project. And then we want to capture that data, every month that goes into our system. But they get the daily data, which then helps them drive their risk scores down. So, certainly that is the future. The way we see our risk scores going as well is that, and this is just my thought process, not necessarily the insurance company's thought process, but, risk scores could be attached to, how the project premiums are. You get a great risk score and you continue to get a great risk score, your premiums will go down. A bit like your car insurance, you put a black box in the car or a telematic device, it tracks how you manage your driving and you get a discount of 30%. So imagine our software being the telematic box for the construction industry. And that's where I see it going.
Awesome. Rob?
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit on that, David, feels like there is a lot, and I know James talks to a lot of these folks, right? There are so many different technologies now converging kind of on job sites, right? You mentioned the cameras, you've got wearable devices for construction workers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see iMitig8 as potentially being a platform for all of this data in the process where you're kind of incorporating all of that in the risk score, or is it separate? Is it really more designed, specifically for that risk manager rather than kind of, I guess, a full platform that's integrating all of this different data sources together and using the AI and analytics that you talked about before?
So it kind of morphs into the question that James and yourself was asking. We see this really going forward as this is why we've created global ecosystem. The global ecosystem is designed to collaborate with other stakeholder companies, other software companies. We want to get the best of Contech and Insurtech, bring them together, port some of that data into our global ecosystem, and give insurers a real full-scape capture of how risk is being managed at project level. So if you can manage it individually at project level, at site level, with all the outside influences that affect it, as well as how it's been managed on site, that brings us into lots of different aspects. It brings us into pre-risk analysis and post-risk analysis. Imagine if there's an insurance claim where a major hurricane hits a project, and you've got data that supports what it looked like prior and what it costs and what the values are. All that is, you can press a button and all of a sudden you've got a valuation instantly of what the damages are. Your loss adjuster then can work rapidly in getting your check and much quicker than spending 6 months analyzing the claim. You've got pre-information and post-information, and bringing all that together into our global ecosystem is where we see the future.
I think it's fascinating. I love how you're leveraging your background as a loss adjuster, as a risk engineer, right? And all of your
Absolutely.
background and training is kind of now brought into the iMitig8 risk platform.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. And thank you for having the discussion around this, because I think this is a really great, unique take on bringing all these different data elements together, bringing photos together. Of course, there are solutions that have come on the market that are explicitly just for hurricane and wind risk mitigation, where you have before and after photos. Whereas this is woven into a comprehensive platform that's used for safety. Of course, can be used for quality assurance as well.
Absolutely.
Litigation comes into this as well. Litigation defense has got to be part of every risk mitigation strategy. It can't just be about weather and flooding and accidents. Because litigation occurs because of a lot of things: delays, who ordered what, and which contractor, which subcontractor performed what trade. I mean, if you the more photographic and video evidence and a better organized structure you can get, the easier it gets to find the truth, right? Single point of truth is something a lot of platforms are seeking out. So I appreciate it, and thank you for doing this. Where can people find out more information about the company and talk to you?
So if anyone wants to look at our website, is the first port of call, which is www.imitigate8risk.com. And iMitigate is spelled I, and then mitigate is MITIG, number 8. Little cool twist on that. So it's iMitigate8risk.com.
Nice. Awesome. Rob, I know you had some news stories for us today. Before we go, what you got?
Yeah, just a couple of quick news items this week. The first is another seed funding round announcement. This is for a company called Ascend, pretty big seed round, $5.5 million. And what they are trying to do is modernize the financial infrastructure of insurance, as they claim. And one of the things that they're enabling partners to do is to offer buy now, pay later, or BNPL options. And this is really uncommon in insurance. Typically you have to either pay a full annual premium upfront, or if there's any type of financing, right, you might have to pay 2-3 months down and the rest later. I know there are companies out there that specialize in premium finance, and they can charge up to 20% interest rates. Like it's almost like a payday loan, right? Yeah. So this is a trend that we're seeing, in many different industries, and Ascend is looking to bring it to them. So I had the opportunity to talk with Andrew Wynn a couple of weeks ago. He's the co-founder, and they wrote a blog post on it. And Andrew has a great background in terms of being a co-founder of a company called Shelter that was acquired by Hippo and turned into Hippo Home Care kind of warranty product. So a great track record already. I think that speaks to a little bit of the larger seed round. So congrats to the folks at Ascend, and definitely something to put on your radar and to watch. And then the other one, and James, David, interested in your thoughts here. Snapsheet has joined NVIDIA Inception to accelerate the development of AI models. And I mentioned this one because I actually was speaking with an investor earlier this week that kind of really called to my attention the work that NVIDIA is doing in the AI space, and really, just powering, I guess, the AI economy. And so it just, I hadn't heard as much about insurance and Insurtech entities kind of partnering directly with them. So this one kind of caught my eye to spin up basically next gen AI models and really get deeper understanding, to get ever more refined. So definitely one that caught my eye as well.
Awesome. And I wanted to point out something that you mentioned, Atlanta, and you mentioned MailChimp. That was a $12 billion transaction, and it was a bootstrap company. So the two founders split the 12. So just wanted to point out the value of sometimes not raising money and building business the slow, painful way. And Rob, I'm a big proponent of bootstrapping when applicable and when possible. And this is proof yet again that it is. I know we talk with a lot of startups on this show, and so good to see some good people be successful after being told they were going to fail so many times. It's not even funny, by investors that had called them. So awesome week for news, and certainly a big time. Now, I know also in insurance news, it's been a hell of a hurricane season already. South Louisiana not only got hit by one hurricane, but then one snuck around from Texas and snuck over on the other side and dumped a bunch of water. So our thoughts are with all of our friends over in Louisiana and all the insurers that cover Louisiana, that they're able to take care of all the claimants. And I know that some of my customers that cover the state have been in overdrive processing claims and proactively reaching out to claimants and trying to make sure they're taken care of. And I just thought I'd point out the incredible social role that insurers play in helping people during and after a disaster, and how much things have changed in the last 50 years with the way insurers approach catastrophic claims. They now get very, very, very proactive in outreach and taking care of their claimants, and it's been awesome to watch people I know in that space do that. So just a little shout out to our friends there. But a big thanks to David Baxter for joining us.
Thank you.
A big thanks to you, Rob, as always, for joining on the podcast.
Yeah, always great to have our Fridays together recording. So another great episode.
Awesome. And again, thank you for joining us on the Insurtech Geek podcast, powered by JB Knowledge. It's all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith, endofInsurance.com. A big thanks to Jim Greenley, our podcast producer, Kara Dalton, our creative producer, and thank you for joining us today. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. See you next time.